again to this panel here, Collabora Office in the Wild, with 4 guests. I will just quickly call their names and they will introduce themselves to you. Right, so what this is all about is we talk about real-world examples from our partners and their experience using Collabora out there in the real world. All right. So first and foremost is Thomas Hildmann, who's the deputy head of the ZECM, which is the Central Campus Management Facility Unit of the Technical University Berlin. I think he was one of the very first customers we had for Nextcloud. I think almost a decade probably of using Collabora. Yeah, quite exciting to have you here. I want to introduce yourself.
Yes, yeah, we at TU Berlin, ZECM is just the IT service center of TU Berlin. We have a weird name, but it was not our idea. And yeah, we are, as talked before, we are providing Nextcloud and Collabora Online for around about 40,000 students and staff at TU Berlin, and around about another 60,000 users from other institutes in Germany. And we started with OwnCloud at the beginning, and then someday switched to Nextcloud now, and providing this for a long, long time.
Awesome, thanks so much. And then to the left of you, Felix Gebauer, who's we've already met both of you on stage today, is the program manager of the Digital Sovereign Workplace in the federal state of Schleswig-Holstein. Yes, and yeah, well, you've been probably in the business of running Nextcloud. For how long is that in production?
About 3 years now. We have currently 13,000 users on our Nextcloud. I expect that to be 20,000 users in a few months. And yeah, part of a growing digitally sovereign workplace, which we're currently developing, yes.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, then to my left, we have Jonathan Treffler, who is with Verdigado, which is a cooperative. Interesting story there, which is affiliated or has been spun out by the German Green Party and their so-called Netzbegrünung association. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I'm from Verdigado. We were founded out from the Netzbegrünung, which was a volunteer effort to advance the digitalization of the party with digital sovereignty. And after volunteers successfully set up many tools, it was time to have actual people employed to keep them running 24/7 because the party depended on it. So 5 years ago, it was created as Verdigado. We're currently 25 people, and I've been there for 5 years managing the central Nextcloud instance of the Green Party.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and last but definitely not least, Gerald Pfeiffer, former CTO, EMEA of SUSE Linux. I think, yeah, I don't know, like 4 decades, 3 decades of open source contribution in your pocket. Yeah, and one of the Collabora consultancy customers. Gerald, want to quickly tell us about you?
Yeah, I've been contributing to open source for quite a while. And I've been using open source desktops, FreeBSD originally, Linux, the latest since I started with SUSE 22 years ago. And often I've been a bit of the outlier or the leader of a group of outliers when, corporate used Office and then Office 365 and Google. I've been using OpenOffice, later LibreOffice all the time. And that brought us together because there was some excitement and some work for for people from Collabora on the way.
Awesome, awesome, great. So now that we know you, let's hear about your experience, like out there in the wild with Collabora. So let's start with a slightly more general question about the talk is all about digital sovereignty and data sovereignty. So if each of you would need to just explain that like elevator pitch style to a non-technical person in 20 seconds. So what does data sovereignty mean? How would you do that? What would you say?
Who?
Shoot.
Oh, me. So if I was explaining this to my dad, I said, your family pictures, your secret recipes, maybe your love letters, things like that, you have in your cupboard. Maybe you lock them in your safe. But nowadays you have your emails and your WhatsApp messages and stuff like that. Who controls them? Just because it's not in your cupboard, who has access to your love letters and the compromising WhatsApps that he still does as an 80-plus-year-old person? So who has access to that? Who controls that? And digital sovereignty is, regardless where it is, on someone else's server, on your cell phone that's maybe controlled by someone, do you have control of where your data is, where your data goes, who can access your data?
Thank you. Anybody else with a take on that, like this elevator pitch, maybe? Jonathan?
Yeah, so I think digital sovereignty is not really different than other types of sovereignty. It's just applied to a different field. Like if you have a supply chain of physical goods that you rely on for your critical operations, you're gonna have to make sure that you have multiple sources of that, but it doesn't work like that with software, because switching has a huge cost. It might be in some other industries too, I'm not sure, but if you just need a basic raw ingredient for something, for some process physically, you can probably switch suppliers quite easily and painlessly. But in software, you really have to be sure that you do not have somebody who has huge leverage over you, because they will squeeze you for every dollar you got, and they will not take your will into account. They will do what's best for them and not for you. So the whole, if you achieve digital sovereignty, it's basically giving out less leverage to other people.
Yes, very true. So it's not just about privacy, but it's also about like business tactics. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, classic power dynamics.
Thomas, any thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, it's hard enough to protect your data from your own government. And so data sovereignty means remaining within a legal jurisdiction of your own country or confederation of states. And to keep this, it's necessary to adapt technology according to the laws in all parties that are involved. The easiest way is to use open source and run it on your own. But if that's not possible, try to use a local provider that you can trust. So the rule of thumb is do as you would do with vegetables. Homegrown tastes best, but if that's not possible, buy seasonal and local products.
Yeah, that's a very nice metaphor. Yeah, Felix, any thoughts on that one?
I think has also been said, yes, but for me it's all about independence, right? I mean, imagine someone who actually threatens to shut off your whole digital infrastructure or to increase prices by 500% just because he doesn't like your style of politics. And imagine you're not being able to say no because all of your data is controlled by this person. And you don't want to be in that position. You have to be, especially as a state administration, you have to be independent and you have to be able to what's already been said, switch suppliers and so on to avoid this kind of dependence. And as we know now, this kind of threat is very real. So we need to achieve this kind of independence to not be in that position.
Yeah, very true, very true. Now that you said that, so is that something that there was any assessment, let's say, I mean, there's always this total cost of ownership argument, but is there any assessment, or is there a growing awareness that migration has a cost? So is that something that you look into? What is the cost, money, time, political capital, perhaps, to shift a software stack?
Yeah, of course we are considering these kind of questions. We have to, as a state administration, we can't just do some project and just for the fun. We have to assess ownership and costs and so on before we do something like this. In the case for what we are doing, shifting the whole workplace from heavily Microsoft invested tools to completely digitally sovereign tools, this is very hard to assess. You have to guess a lot of times, but we have done it, and we know that we are right now really heavily investing many millions of euros into development of the tools, into migration projects, into change management, into project managers, and so on and so on. But we believe, and that is also our business case, that in the long run, and we're talking years from now, because we have to first switch and then before we see any real cost effects. But we believe that in the long run we're going to save a couple of millions euros per year because of licenses fees. Yeah.
And also possibly because you don't need to redo all the data that someone else hosted or pay the ransom.
Yes.
So Jonathan, I mean, the Green Party has been historically quite favoring that approach. I mean, what's your take on this cost of migration or cost of sovereignty?
Yes, so for the Green Party, it's actually a bit of a special case. I mentioned that volunteer efforts started long ago, 20 years ago, 2006, to set up open source tools for the party. So there was never a migration. It was always digitally sovereign, I guess, before the word was a thing. I don't know who used it first, but I would guess it was not a used term in 2006 yet. So it was an expansion of building on already existing thing. And there are obviously many new development projects that we've done over the years, but there was never a Microsoft migration, for example.
Interesting. Right, so let's quickly hear Gerald there, but I have an obvious follow-up. I will get them back to you. I mean, that's clearly something that SUSE has been front and center for that company. So is that an argument? I'm sure that you did this kind of research, but is that an argument you're using internally as well?
I mean, partly because it's better. But the recommendation I would make, and I think there is something that everyone who's on stage here and who was on stage today have in common, is you started your projects when you wanted and when you could, as opposed to starting the project when you had to, because because of a political change in the US, for example, or because a vendor went a little crazy. So that would be my recommendation, actually. Look in your environment and drive it instead of being driven.
Which means like you have agency instead of like being driven by outside forces.
Yeah, exactly.
True. On that question, Jonathan, that background story, that history that you gave, how did you arrive there? Did you do some evaluation? I mean, like these days, like it's all over in the trade press, but how did you arrive at this? Also, like what kind of software did you were picking? How did you do that? Did you do some market analysis, or how did you make that choice?
So when we set up something new, it's obviously looking at a lot of different things, spinning up different things, and just looking seeing how they feel, how they could integrate in the party, looking at their code base, if there's something that we can work with, because often we need to in an implementation, change a few things about it to make it fit with the rest of the party infrastructure. But also a lot of decisions were made back when it was still volunteer-based, so the Nextcloud choice was, I think, the obvious choice for anybody in the open source community in Germany. And I think those choices have worked out pretty well. But obviously, volunteers don't do weeks of market research.
Okay, then maybe let me ask the same question then to Felix and Thomas. How was that happening for you?
Yeah, we also did no fancy market evaluation over a couple of months. I think we mainly looked into, we went for the market leaders, and of course we had some requirements and we checked them, and but they checked all the boxes. So we wanted to go for the kinds of software that were already leading the open source markets in their fields and had mature products. And on the other hand, I mean, the whole initiative in Schleswig-Holstein has quite a history. A couple of years ago, we were trying to integrate the so-called Phoenix suite, which is now became OpenDesk, and all those products we use today, Nextcloud, XWiki, OpenExchange, UCS, they were also part of the Phoenix suite by then and are now part of OpenDesk. And also we want to stay compatible to what happens there and what Sanders is developing and so on. So it was quite of an obvious choice to stick with those products that were already at hand.
And how about you, Thomas?
There are very different ways choosing software in a university, because university is that does not work top down like other institutes. For example, our introduction to GitLab was because we installed a local GitLab for us to provide our own services. Someone recognized this and used it too, and after that it get out of control, and we had to provide it for the whole university. Just to give an example. Other softwares are really, that we install various products from and start a market analysis, and at the end, there's an impact, and we have to choose. According to the state we have at the moment. So sometimes it's just the software that runs first and runs good first, and that's the choice, and that's something we have to deal with. So there are many different ways we introduce different softwares.
But that's quite an endorsement, I think, for software. If you say, well, we just went with what worked best, and another way to look at it is like how well it works for open source. When you win over the nerds, and then they just kind of implement that because it's open source and it's easy. You just like install that and then run with it, and then everybody else says, "Oh, great!" So, and on top of that, I was wondering, in terms of, let's say, you mentioned earlier that you buy vegetables locally if you can not grow them personally. Did that play a role? Let's say that there's a, let's say, commercial ecosystem based in Europe for many of those products.
Yes, it's an important way to decide a product. It begins with an easier connection to the product owner. It goes on with more compatible contracts and laws and so on, and it ends with the trustworthiness I talked about so much. So that's it.
Awesome, thank you. Felix, anything to add maybe from your end?
No, I agree. I mean, we have an open source strategy. Maybe some of you have read it. It's online on our website, of Schleswig-Holstein website. And also there is this aspect of public money, public code. So we don't want to have what we spend is public money in the end. So we want to spend it on local, if not local, then at least European companies, so it stays within our economy. So this is, of course, a factor. Yeah, it's one of the factors which we apply to choosing software.
Okay, and then maybe Jonathan, what's your thought on? I mean, you essentially arrived there with the same, let's say, volunteers doing that, but is that something that plays a role then, like being able to get services?
If the code is from Europe, basically, or yeah. So for us, it's not entirely important where the code is written, basically, or where the company that writes the code is located, because for most open source software we deploy, it's just the default, not some enterprise version. We make sure it runs for ourselves. So if there is, for example, we need some bug patched or something, we would probably do it on our own rather than paying for some support contract, because that's just not financially feasible to pay for every open source enterprise contract for a political party, which is very different from the financials of a company, where every member of a political party pays like maybe $20, $30 a month or euros a month in membership fees, and that's very different from that's basically one SaaS seat, if you want, or one in the open source enterprise contract, one user, and that's very different from a employee where you pay multiple thousands of euros anyway for their salary. So most of the stuff we manage on our own, and therefore the company that produces it is not that important, because we can audit or change it ourselves.
Yes, I understand that. So then maybe, Gerald, SUSE is a little bit different there, because, I mean, you have thousands of engineers, so how is it how do you look at those things? I mean, are you maintaining everything yourself, or is it something where you also partner?
So for products we ship, generally, we have engineers. Sometimes, like for the kernel, it's dozens of engineers. Compiler, it's maybe a handful of engineers who are experts. And you know, if you look at the Linux distribution, there is like 1,500 packages if you use a small distribution, or at least they're offered you. So that's a lot of effort, and you can't be the expert in everything. So that's why in the case of LibreOffice, we partnered with Collabora, and you know, sometimes it's funny. Usually I file the bugs myself. I distill something, file a bug report upstream if possible, and then I read the patch. And sometimes, you know, the patches you create are very small. Sometimes, I mean, favorite one I think was one line to enable a complete feature. But the point is, you know, there's this story about the craftsman. You know, the charge is like $1,000 for one hit with a hammer. But the point is having the experience. And it's not always, what I found is not always the same engineer, because it's a huge code base. And so you need expertise, you know, you need the right people to put on the problem, and then to know where to fix it. And some problems are really hard, and I found that I'm really bad in actually guessing. You know, there is bugs where I think, wow, this looks like a really hard one, and then it's like a 10-line patch, and then it's like, oh, this must be easy. And it's like, Torsten comes back and say, yeah, it's probably like 2 person months at the minimum. It's like, holy cow, that's a lot. And it's this expertise. And you know, I know it, how we handle things internally for what we ship, that you cannot replace the expertise. You cannot take a trainee, you cannot take an Atsubi and put them on a difficult kernel problem. I mean, you can if you have 6 months time and they're really good. And so I appreciate how hard it is to get into a complex, grown code base like LibreOffice, Collabora Office, know where to start looking, and then actually, sometimes even then you need 2-3 attempts to avoid regressions happening elsewhere. So it's I mean, kudos to you and the expertise you have built up. By the way, who here in this room has fixed one of my bugs? Samuel? It's probably more, huh? Some people hiding. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And it's the saying, like with this, like $1 for hitting the screw and $500 for knowing which screw to hit, with that expertise. Yes, I agree. So we're, I think, almost at the end of that wonderful half an hour. So maybe one last question, and I'm asking for a quick answer. It might not even be for all of you, but for those that have migrated with lots of end users, how do you encourage users to get comfortable with the new tool? What is your journey there? Like how do you convince people to change their habits and what they work with?
You wanted a quick answer, right? It's hard. Well, it's a lot of things. I said earlier this morning we invested heavily in change management, for example. That means people we paid for who actually went into the departments we have and who were there in the offices, who were there for the people who had questions, who streamlined our communication, who made sure the information reached the end users, who made sure that the end users knew where to find the training material. We also invested in training material which we produced ourselves, so we didn't just point to Collabora Guide online, but we made our own videos and where we told people exactly how the new tools work. We did that for OpenExchange, for LibreOffice, for Nextcloud, and all of that. This, as I said, it was a lot of things that came together. And of course, it's also the change story. We told people why we're doing this. It's important for the people to understand that it's not because we like to annoy them with new software tools, but we're doing it for a reason and for a purpose. And when they understand this, and I think most of our employees do understand it actually, it makes it easier for them to adopt to the new software tools. So that's also an important factor. And of course, on a strategic level, after all, we have a strong political commitment to do this, and that means that it trickles down, and actually people follow. Sometimes you can also argue they have no choice. If we take away Microsoft Office, well, then what choice do they have? But we can do that because we have a strong political commitment, and we can enforce this commitment, and then people join and people follow.
Cool, thank you. Thomas, how about your organization?
I'm not the one to give short answers.
I don't think I was meant with the question because we didn't do migration, but yeah. Okay, yeah, but I guess that's the I think that's really in my experience the magic combination of treating people as grown-ups, like explaining why something is necessary and why something is done, and then helping them to achieve that. I think that's the gold standard. All right, yeah, so that was entertaining, at least for me. I hope for you as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining tonight. And with that, I wonder what's up next here. Drinks and networking. Lovely.